revolving account for school choice revenues. And the expense for tuitioning out school choice students is an expense line in our general fund budget. So they're not, the money's not all put in one pool. You know, every directive is like, you don't net out, you don't report revenues minus expenses. So keep in mind that, and that
Until the
exactly,
superintendent tells you to make a slide that says that.
You're doing this special.
we're doing this so we can see, to see the ebb and flow. But the goal, and I think the true success is exactly that, Terry, is as you see the school choice, the general fund expense lines going down because fewer and fewer students are choicing out to charter schools or to other school districts. Maintaining or increasing your revenues coming in, but again, losing fewer and fewer kids to these other schools. So that's,
So at least in what the FY15 numbers are showing us, there's $2.2 million of choice money and charter money that's flowing out, and I think a long-term goal for that is to get the children from Harwich and Chatham to see to see Monomoy as the system that they want to be in, and that means that we have to keep programs and options available.
Yeah, that 2.2 number, does that include the tech or is that separate?
That's
Tech,
separate.
yeah.
So the tech's a completely separate budget for the towns.
so there you have it. I think
Aren't you just the bearer of good news?
Steve?
The choices that were made for this year's budget were eyes wide open.
Right.
There were some of us that really felt that that was going to be problematic and that we were expending way too much. And it's coming back to bite us. So, I mean, none of us are surprised by the situation we're in. We put ourselves into it. So we just need to be very creative with the 16 budget.
Right. So Monday for the Harwich Selectmen and joint FinCon meeting, the meeting is to be a budget guideline meeting. Katie and I just wanted to at least get ahead of this and at least remind people where we are, where we left off last year. Trust that we are already working on the next column on each of these, but I think it's really important to understand the story of where we are at this point and what those revolving accounts and that buffer that we have and going into the next year, along with the other variables on how much excess and deficiency should we have, given that we have borrowing that we still have to go out and do. And again, I think the towns need to sort of understand that that whole picture.
And one of the, at last year's budget presentations, one of the things we did present as a budget challenge was our over-reliance on our school choice and our circuit breaker dollars. But it helped our towns in terms of achieving, the level of the assessment that was doable for the towns. So we were, a good partner.
Speaking of good partners, leading to it, and good job, both of you, for this. I feel a great deal more understanding of the history. So if I do, I can imagine this might be, was there a little humor there?
Not me.
Self-effacing. Are you thinking in terms of polishing this and asking our BOS and the Finance Committee in Howard for a 15-minute overview to show them this?
And I think what's great too is we have 2 years of actual numbers now. When we were building the 14 budget, it was 3 months into when we became a district. So we have 2 years of actual, so you can now you can take a solid look at a history that we did not have before.
I do think it would be beneficial to have the budget subcommittee convene before the BOS meeting, just to kind of share with you, sort of our polished slides, but also, share with you at least an overview of where we see 16. I don't anticipate us going into the Board of Selectmen meeting at this point talking about 16. We're there for the budget guidelines, but we can at least talk about the stage that's been set, with the history here, and then I think share some really good news when it comes to enrollment trends that I think are important.
We had established a time and place for that yet?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
And we also have a meeting, we have a finance team meeting that are the town manager for the town of Harwich and Chatham, and the two finance directors, superintendent, me, the treasurer from Harwich, and our treasurer. We have a meeting tomorrow, a scheduled meeting as well,
Good.
at 10.
So the inner team group, as well as our members here, will have some information prior to Monday evening. So there'll be some folks in that audience that this might be the second run through.
Yeah.
So, sort of following up on what Steve said, last year, before we went in with our final budget, we knew that there was some amount that we did not want to lose from our budget. We kind of wanted to go in for a little bit more, but we didn't because we wanted to help out the town. And we knew that would be a sacrifice to us and not beneficial for the kids. And at that time, we agreed that we would do that as a one-shot. So I'm hoping everyone on this committee is unified on making sure that, I look at this sort of like a small business beginning. And all small businesses given the edict practically that for 3 to 5 years you will lose money. And so in order for us to do the promise of what our school is supposed to be for the kids, I think that we need to be really clear on maintaining the budget we need. I had no idea it was quite this much, but I think that's really important because I think even fiscally, if to whatever degree we're fiscal conservatives, if we don't do this, we'll bleed much more, and it will hurt much more in the long run.
All set. No other comments? Okay, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Scott.
It's ray of sunshine.
Yes, and now we'll move on to the fun part. Item 4, evaluating the superintendent.
I'll just sit over here.
Maybe we should let him do his report first, so we can.
Who's got the tomatoes?
You should have good enough for the rest of it.
Thank you all for being here. What our next topic is, and the guidelines have been created, and I could be wrong by a year or two, but several years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and correct me, Nancy or Steve, the Department of Education, Secondary and Elementary, created an evaluation system for the professionals within the whole Commonwealth. That would include teachers all the way up through the leadership team, including the superintendent. And there's some consistency about this document amongst the rating system, and approximately 55 standards that the staff people would have to be evaluated on a yearly basis. As far as the superintendent's concerned, it began, and we're easily remiss in the sense we're 2 or 3 months behind schedule. We invited the superintendent based on the school committee's goals of last October, November, to create 4 or 5 or 6 goals that would fall into the category of at least 4 professional goals and 1 or 2 personal goals that he would document and then create evidence of meeting those goals or an accomplishment. And in the course of the last 4 or 5 months, Scott has done that. He's given us documentation as well as shared several months ago the actual goals. It's the task of the sitting school committee to take those goals, as well as the documentation from the Department of Education, as well as the worksheets from our superintendent that signifies evidence of growth towards those goal accomplishments, and make a judgment relative to the achievement, it's been met, it exceeded it, and at the same time create a summative individually that would reflect a rating system from unsatisfactory up to through proficient to exemplary. Needs improvement would be the third. So there are 4 rankings. The process we're using this evening publicly, I've asked the school committee the past couple of months to document their judgments on a draft that's provided by the Department of Ed, and we will share with an overview or an insight its individual person's rating as well as highlights of some of the goal accomplishments. And the school committee members then will turn it into the chair. Hopefully in the next several days, will create an aggregate or a final document that hopefully reflects the 7 members of the committee's overview, and that with second viewing by the members would be the final 2013-2014 evaluation of Scott Carpenter, and that would go in his file. And then from that, in the next month, would begin the same cycle all over again, with establishment of goals, a midterm cycle evaluation, and then finally in June or hopefully July of next year, a second year will conclude. So that's my take, or the process of how we're attempting to have this measurement take place. So why don't we begin with an overview of our own individual rankings. What I'm going to do is start with Sharon down at the far end of the table, and if you just give a brief overview, and then we'll move right through all of us here present.
Okay, the goals, professional practice goal, met. Student learning goals, significant progress. District improvement goals, significant progress. Then on the standards, instructional leadership, proficient data has been continuously collected to further inform instruction, curriculum, and assessment, which along with shared vision are in the process of being aligned for the Monomoy Regional Schools. Learning growth is an area for further development. Management and operations, compliance with state and federal law and scheduling time for learning and teaching are proficient. Areas needing focus include addressing full range of safety, health, emotional, social needs, providing school committee members with safety handbooks and procedures, and reviewing these to be sure they're up to date. I didn't even know we were having a safety thing tonight. So that's proficient. Standard 3, family and community engagement. There's been a good outreach to the community regarding merging the schools of the 2 towns into one region. Professional culture, continuous learning has been a strength of the Monomoy schools. The superintendent is charged with communicating effectively and constructively resolving conflict, bringing the students and staff of 2 towns together to further develop professional culture that includes respect, engaging all to create a shared vision, and nurturing staff and students to interact effectively to achieve improved results. Those are areas of further focus. Proficient, overall proficient. No other comments. Oh, yes, exemplary for the physical building of the school and movement to the middle and high school in time for the opening of this year's school.
Thank you, Sharon. Amanda?
Well, obviously, I'm quite new to the committee, but having children in the school system, I had a lot of experience with Scott, and so my opinions are based on that. And I think that his greatest strengths and things that he accomplished in this huge project that he had, we're building an amazing team of administrators and principals. The group that we have in place right now is just, second to none. So I think that was really his greatest strength. And obviously, this beautiful building that we're in, took a lot of time and effort and sweat and tears, I'm sure. So that was one of the other things that I thought was his big strength. And enrollment, just seeing those numbers coming in for the new school year were really impressive, and I don't think those could have happened without Scott. And I look forward to seeing what he can do in terms of improving the MCAS scores and the curriculum, and so I look forward to seeing that. And overall, I evaluated him as proficient.
Thanks, Amanda. Brian?
In the interest of time, I'm not going to read through the entire process, but I would like to make some comments, summarize the high points of my evaluation, which I've written. I acknowledge that the extraordinary duties and time commitment associated with regionalization and construction of a new high school restricts the opportunity to perform the normal and usual superintendent administrative duties, and I commend Mr. Carpenter for his demonstrated ability to accomplish as much as he has accomplished despite the associated time constraints. I particularly support his goal of improving the Monomoy website and having it become the go-to place for parents and non-parent community members. I also feel that historically it sometimes appears that the school administration focus is on students with learning issues and educational disabilities at the expense of those students with advanced or extraordinary learning abilities. I'm not saying that's true, but it sometimes appears that way. I'm pleased and satisfied with the efforts being made by Mr. Carpenter to improve and increase the educational opportunities in the high school by way of expansion of AP courses, and also the efforts in meeting the needs of advanced and gifted middle school students through the middle school enrichment program. I'd also like to find, or to seek to find a way to get better attendance and feedback from parents and potentially other community members. I think there needs to be a way for them to be more involved without involvement which interferes with teaching, and to find the best intersection of parent involvement and non-interference. I'd like to, I would, in terms of further future evaluations, I would be curious as to what extent we might be seeking feedback on performance goals and attending and obtaining those goals from other members of the community and the staff, as opposed to just our own personal input. So that's my
Thank you,
comments.
Brian. Nancy?
I also did a little written summary for myself. Mine was a little less formal as I wrote Scott and not Mr. Carpenter. Scott has made great strides in his role pushing Monomoy forward as a whole. He has stepped into his role as superintendent with many, many loose ends to tie up. He quickly identified them and created a timeline for their completion, meeting most of those. I didn't want to say all because I couldn't make sure that all were met, or I said most, but I'm pretty sure closer to all. Some of those highlights included the transitional planning for the middle school and high school, expanding the high school curriculum, some advanced academic options at the middle school, and a regularly designated professional learning community time for all the employees. Scott has also greatly improved the communication with the school community, even though we'd like to see a little bit more. Some other areas that I could feel that a little bit more improvement would be communicating with the community as a whole, not just the school community, but the public community of the towns, and with that sharing the Monomoy pride with them. Also continuing to build relationships with the towns and their boards, as they need to understand that we feel and know that they're our partner, and we're not give and take with them, we're all together. So.
In an overall rating?
Overall rating was proficient.
As was mine, I didn't mention that either.
Thank you, Steve.
I as well give an overall rating as proficient. And in my overview statement, I say Scott has done a very good job picking up where his predecessors have left off in the developing of the new Monomoy Regional School District. What has been accomplished in the past year to bring the curriculum and school cultures together is not done by just one individual, but is accomplished by the work of the whole team, from the custodians to the senior administrators. As superintendent, Scott has done an outstanding job in keeping everyone focused on the task at hand and communicated well so that all were well informed and on the same page. I think we did a good job at holding public forums, as this new schools were coming together, so that parents had a feel for what their student was walking into. And that all started with Scott's focus. So my only other one comment, when I was looking through this under family and community, as a father, Scott has 2 children in the system, so he can't help but be involved. I think so much so that at times it can be hard just to be a dad and not the superintendent when at a school function, which I think is a hard balance, and I think you've done well with that.
Thank you, Steve. Ed?
First, just the goals. All of the goals that I read, Scott has either met or has made significant progress towards meeting all those goals. My overall rating is proficient, and now I'll attempt to read my own handwriting. The superintendent has been creative in utilizing his administrative team and curriculum leaders in achieving a broader range of curriculum offerings to all students at various levels. The superintendent has immersed himself into the knowledge of the cultures of both the Chatham and Harwich communities. He is able, because of the knowledge, to facilitate total community involvement, which will ensure the success of the Monomoy Regional District. The superintendent has increased the transparency of all school information to all town boards and residents of the towns of Harwich and Chatham. Superintendent keeps the school committee informed of local developments and the status of school committee requests in a timely manner. That is my report.
Thank you, Ed.